Admiral Menu Park stood at the observation deck of Unity Prime, watching the stars shimmer against the black void of space. He was 53 years old, with gray touching his temples and lines around his eyes that spoke of long years in service. For 47 years, humanity had been part of something bigger than themselves. The Galactic Council had welcomed Earth with open arms, and humans had worked hard to prove they belonged among the stars. Menu remembered the day Earth joined the Council. He had been a young officer then, fresh out of the academy and full of hope. The galaxy seemed infinite, filled with species who had solved the problems that plagued Earth for centuries. No more wars, no more hatred, just cooperation and peace. Humanity had embraced this new way with everything they had. The door behind him hissed open. Ambassador walked in, carrying a data pad. She was younger than Menu, only 38, but she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had negotiated treaties with beings twice her age. Her short black hair was practical, cut close to her head, and her eyes were sharp. "They are making noise again," she said without greeting. She knew Menu preferred directness. Menu sighed. The Empire had been a thorn in humanity's side for the past decade. They were a reptilian species, 7 feet tall with scales that shimmered green and gold. They were warriors by culture, and they looked down on species that chose diplomacy over combat. Humanity was at the top of their mockery list. "What do they want this time?" Menu asked. "The system. They claim their ancestors once hunted in those stars," handed him the data pad. "They're demanding we leave New Sol." New Sol? The colony had been there for 12 years. 47,000 people called it home. They had farms, schools, and families. Children had been born there who had never seen Earth. Menu felt his jaw tighten. "What does the council say?" His expression darkened. "They suggest we negotiate, find a compromise." "Of course they do." Menu set the pad down. "We always compromise, we always bend, and they always push for more." Said nothing. She knew Menu was right, but what choice did they have? Earth had 14 colonies spread across 6 star systems. They had built these settlements without weapons, without warships designed for combat. Every ship in the human fleet was made for exploration, transport, or research. They had no army, no weapons of war. They had dismantled all of that when they joined the Council. Menu had argued against it back then. He had stood before the United Earth Congress and warned them that peace only lasted when you had the strength to defend it. They had called him a warmonger, stuck in the old ways. Humanity was better than that now, they said. The galaxy had evolved beyond violence. He had been outvoted. The weapons were destroyed. The warships were converted. Earth became a model of peaceful civilization. Across the galaxy in the system, Captain Lee prepared his ship for departure. The Harmony's Hope was a massive vessel built to carry colonists in comfort. It had luxury cabins, gardens that grew real food, and recreation areas where children could play. Right now, those recreation areas were full of laughter. Walked through the main corridor, nodding to families as they passed. 3,000 people were aboard his ship. 800 of them were children. He knew many of them by name now. Little who wanted to be a pilot, who collected rocks from every station they visited, who asked endless questions about everything. They were heading to New Sol. These families had sold everything they owned for a chance at a new life under alien stars, felt the weight of responsibility every moment. He had transported colonists for 15 years and never lost a single passenger. He intended to keep that record. His first officer, Lieutenant Sora Han, met him on the bridge. She was a medical officer by training but had cross-trained in ship operations. At 31, she was one of the youngest senior officers in the fleet, but she had earned her position through skill and dedication. "We're ready for departure, Captain," she reported. "All systems green. The families are settled. We have clearance from Unity Prime." Nodded. "Good. Let's give these people their new home." The Harmony's Hope undocked smoothly, its engines humming with barely a vibration. It was built for comfort, not speed, but it would get them there safely. The journey to would take 3 weeks, had made the trip dozens of times. He knew every star along the way. Back on Unity Prime, Minu met with the delegation. Their leader was a massive warrior named. His scales were darker than most, almost black, and his eyes were yellow slits that seemed to look through Minu rather than at him. "The system belongs to the Empire," announced. His voice was deep and rough like rocks grinding together. "Your kind will leave." Minu kept his face neutral. "The system has no official claim in council records. We settled there legally 12 years ago. Our people have built lives there." Leaned forward. "Your people are soft, weak. You hide behind council rules because you cannot defend what is yours. Warriors do not respect cowards." Minu felt his hands clench behind his back. "We are not cowards, we choose peace." "You choose to be prey," stood. "We claim, resist, and we will show you what happens to prey." Ambassador stepped forward. "The council will not allow open warfare. We can reach a compromise. We could share the system. We could provide technology, resources." "We do not share with prey," interrupted. "But perhaps the council will see reason where you cannot." He turned and left, his delegation following like shadows. When they were gone, looked at Minu. "He's going to take this to the full council." "Let him," Minu said quietly. "We've done nothing wrong. The council will support us." But even as he said it, Minu felt doubt creep into his mind. The council praised humanity's peaceful nature, yes, but would they stand with Earth against the Empire, that had weapons, armies, and a reputation that made other species nervous? Humanity had treaties and good intentions. Minu walked back to the observation deck after the meeting. He stared out at the stars and thought about the Harmony's hope making its way to New Sol. He thought about the children aboard, dreaming of their new home. He thought about 47 years of peace. And deep in his gut, in a place he tried to ignore, Minu felt fear, not for himself, but for those children, for the colonists who trusted that the galaxy had truly evolved beyond violence, for the future that humanity had bet everything on. The stars looked cold tonight, distant and uncaring. Minu pressed his hand against the glass and closed his eyes. He hoped he was wrong. He hoped the council would stand with them. He hoped peace was enough. But hope, he knew, was not a strategy, and the galaxy was about to teach humanity a lesson that would change everything. The Harmony's hope drifted peacefully through space, 3 hours from reaching New Sol. Captain Lee had just finished his morning rounds, checking on families and making sure everyone was comfortable. In the recreation area, children played games while their parents watched with excited smiles. They were almost home. Lieutenant Sorahan sat at her medical station, reviewing supply lists. New Sol would need medical equipment, and she wanted to make sure the delivery was perfect. She heard laughter from the corridor outside and smiled. This was what she loved about colony transport: the hope, the fresh starts, the dreams. On the bridge, the sensor officer called out, "Captain, I'm detecting multiple ships ahead." Walked to the sensor display. 6 vessels, medium-sized, holding position near New Sol. The signatures matched warships. "Hail them," ordered. "Let them know we're a civilian transport on approach to New Sol." The communications officer sent the message. They waited. No response came. Felt his stomach tighten. "Send it again. Make sure they know we have families aboard, children." Again, no response. The ships began to move, forming a line across the Harmony's hope's path. "Evasive maneuvers," ordered, but even as he said it, he knew it was pointless. The Harmony's hope was built for comfort, not speed. It couldn't outrun a shuttle, let alone warships. The first blast hit the port engine. The ship shuddered violently. Alarms blared across every deck. Grabbed his chair to stay upright as the lights flickered. "Shields to maximum," he shouted. But the Harmony's hope had basic shields, designed to protect against debris and radiation, not military weapons. They might as well have been paper. Another blast struck the starboard side, then another. They were firing continuously, methodically tearing the ship apart. Could hear screaming from the lower decks through the intercom. The screaming of children. "Broadcast surrender," ordered desperately. "Tell them we surrender, we're unarmed." The communications officer sent the message on all frequencies. The ships didn't even slow their attack. Sora ran onto the bridge, her medical coat stained with blood. "Hull breaches on decks 3 through 7. We have casualties everywhere, I need." The ship lurched again. A massive explosion tore through the engine section. Half the lights went out. The artificial gravity failed in sections and heard things crashing, people screaming. Through the viewport, he saw the ships approaching. They weren't trying to disable the Harmony's hope. They were destroying it deliberately, carefully, making sure it couldn't escape. "Abandon ship," ordered. "Get everyone to the escape pods." But when crew members tried to launch the pods, fire targeted them specifically. Each pod that ejected was immediately destroyed. No one was getting out. They were making sure of that. The ship's hull creaked and groaned. Fires burned in the corridors. Sora activated her communicator with shaking hands. She started recording. "This is Lieutenant Sora Han, medical officer of the Harmony's Hope," she said into the recorder. "We are under attack by forces. They are not accepting our surrender. They are targeting escape pods. They are killing everyone." She could hear the sounds from the lower decks. Families hiding in their cabins. Children crying. They were boarding now. She could hear their heavy footsteps through the damaged hull, moving through the ship deck by deck. Sora continued recording. "There are 3,000 people on this ship, 800 children. They are executing everyone they find. They are not taking prisoners. Tell Earth. Tell them what they did to us. Tell them." The bridge doors exploded inward. 3 warriors entered, their weapons raised. Sora saw Captain stand, his hands up, trying to speak. They shot him before he could say a word. Sora kept recording even as they approached her. "Tell Earth," she whispered into the communicator. "Tell them about the children. Tell them." The transmission ended in static. On New Sol, Colony Administrator received the distress signal from the Harmony's Hope. He immediately tried to contact the ship, but got only silence. Then he saw them, warships entering orbit around New Sol. Activated the colony-wide emergency broadcast. "This is Administrator. All residents, this is not a drill. We are under attack. Move to the shelters immediately. Repeat, this is not a drill." But New Sol had no weapons. The shelters were built for storms and accidents, not military assault. Knew this, but what else could he do? He activated his communicator and set it to broadcast to Unity Prime. If this was the end, Earth needed to know. "This is New Sol Colony," he said steadily. "We are under attack by forces. The Harmony's Hope is not responding. We believe it has been destroyed. They are landing ground forces now." Through his window, he could see the ships descending. They weren't landing at the spaceport. They were landing everywhere, surrounding the colony. "We have 47,000 civilians here," continued. "We have no weapons. We are broadcasting our surrender on all channels, but they are not responding. I don't think they care." The first explosions hit the residential sectors, felt the building shake. He could hear weapons fire now, getting closer, screaming in the streets. "They are not taking prisoners," he said into the communicator. "They are executing everyone. Families, children, elderly, everyone. To Earth Command, to the Council, to anyone who hears this. We trusted the peace. We believed we were safe. We were wrong." Warriors burst through his door, kept broadcasting. He wanted Earth to see this, to know. "Tell our families we tried to." The feed went dark. On Unity Prime, Admiral Minu Park watched both transmissions. He watched Sora's final moments. He watched last words. And then he watched the broadcast their own message across the Galactic Council networks. They showed the wreckage of the Harmony's Hope, bodies floating in space. They showed new soul burning. They showed warriors standing over human dead, holding their weapons high in victory. And they laughed. The commander appeared on screen. This is what happens to prey that forgets its place. The humans claimed, "We have reclaimed it." Let this be a lesson to all weak species who hide behind council words. Strength is the only law that matters. Minu watched the entire thing, every second, every body. He saw children among the dead. He saw families who had been trying to reach the shelters. He saw elderly people who couldn't run fast enough. He saw the colony burning. 3,000 on the Harmony's Hope, 47,000 on New Soul, 50,000 human lives extinguished in less than 3 hours. Ambassador ran into his office. "Minu, we need to demand council intervention. This is genocide, this is." "Get me the council chambers," Minu said quietly. His voice was calm, but his hands were shaking. "Now." The emergency council session assembled within an hour. Representatives from 100 species filled the chamber. Minu stood at the human podium, and behind him the footage played on repeat. The massacre, the murder, the children. 50,000 humans are dead, Minu said, murdered by the Empire. We ask the Council to condemn this action and enforce sanctions. The Council members looked uncomfortable. They whispered to each other. Finally, the Council speaker, a being made of light and energy, addressed the chamber. The Council offers its thoughts and condolences to the human species. However, the claim ancient territorial rights to the system. The humans chose to settle disputed space. While the loss of life is regrettable, the Council cannot intervene in what amounts to a territorial dispute. Minu stared at the speaker. Territorial dispute, they murdered children. They defended what they believe is theirs, another representative said. Perhaps humans should have been better prepared to defend their settlement. We followed council laws, shouted. We settled legally. We disarmed because you told us violence was not needed anymore. The speaker's light dimmed slightly. The council maintains that violence should be avoided. However, we cannot force the two. You won't help us, Minu said flatly. It wasn't a question. The chamber fell silent. Finally, the speaker responded. The council will not go to war with the Empire over this matter. We recommend the humans negotiate for the return of remains and seek peaceful resolution going forward. Minu looked around the chamber, at the 100 species who sat in judgment, at the beings who had promised Earth that the galaxy had evolved beyond violence, at the council that had convinced humanity to disarm and trust in the power of words. Not one of them met his eyes. I understand, Minu said quietly. He turned and left the chamber, following behind. They walked in silence until they reached the human quarters, then spoke. What do we do now? Minu looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 50,000 humans floated in the void, their dreams ended, their lives stolen, and the galaxy had decided their deaths didn't matter. Now, Minu said, we stop being humane. The news reached Earth within hours. Every screen, every device, every communication channel showed the same images. The Harmony's Hope torn apart in space. New Soul colony burning. Bodies, so many bodies. The world stopped. Schools closed. Businesses shut down. People gathered in the streets, in their homes, in places of worship. They watched the footage that they had proudly broadcast. They saw what had been done to their people, to their children. And Earth mourned, not just with tears, but with a rage that had been sleeping for 47 years. President Song called an emergency session of the United Earth Congress in Geneva. Representatives from every nation arrived within 24 hours. The massive chamber filled with men and women who had spent their careers promoting peace and cooperation. Now they sat in silence, watching the footage play again and again. Admiral Minu Park stood before them. He had not slept since the massacre. His uniform was wrinkled, his eyes red, but his voice was steady. 50,000 of our people are dead, he said. The Galactic Council has refused to act. They offered condolences. They suggested we should have defended ourselves better. They will not help us. A murmur ran through the chamber. Anger, disbelief, fear. President Song leaned forward. Admiral, what are our options? Minyu activated a holographic display. We have 14 colonies, approximately 200,000 humans living off Earth. All of them are now potential targets. We have no military fleet. We have no weapons capable of deterring another attack. Under our current posture, we cannot protect our people. You're saying we're defenseless, someone called out. Yes, Minyu said simply. We dismantled our defenses when we joined the Council. We trusted that the galaxy had evolved beyond violence. We were wrong. Doctor stood up. She was 62 years old, head of the Mars Research Facility, and one of Earth's leading scientists. I need to tell this Congress something that has been classified for 47 years. The chamber went quiet. President Song nodded for her to continue. When we joined the Galactic Council, said, we didn't just dismantle our weapons. We locked away research. Technologies we had developed but chose not to use. We called them the Terran Protocols. We buried them because we wanted to be better than our violent history. She activated her own display. Blueprints and schematics filled the air. Weapons systems, ships, technologies that made nuclear weapons look primitive. We have quantum that can tear a ship apart at the molecular level, explained. We have AI-guided systems that never miss, never tire, never stop. We have biological weapons tailored to specific species. We have kinetic weapons that can crack planets. We locked all of this away because we thought we didn't need it anymore. The Congress stared at the displays. Some looked horrified, others looked relieved. Why are you telling us this now? President Song asked. Because we need to decide, said. Do we stay as we are, or do we become what we need to be to survive? A representative from Africa stood. If we activate these weapons, we become as bad as the. If we don't activate them, Minyu countered, we die. They killed our children and the galaxy did nothing. What happens at the next colony? And the next? How many more funerals do we hold while we take the moral high ground? A representative from Asia spoke up. What about diplomacy? What about trying to? We tried diplomacy. Ambassador's voice cracked through the chamber. She had been silent until now, but she stood with tears streaming down her face. I spent 10 years negotiating with the council. I believed in the power of words. And you know what I got? I got to watch 3,000 people die on a transport ship because they thought they were safe. I got to watch 47,000 colonists get slaughtered because we told them violence was a thing of the past. She took a breath, steadying herself. I still believe in peace, but peace only works when the other side wants it too. They don't want peace. They want dominance, and the council won't stop them because they're afraid. The debate continued for hours. Some argued for restraint, for trying to find another way. Others demanded immediate action. They showed the footage again. The children, the families, the colonists who had trusted that Earth would keep them safe. Finally, President Song stood. We will vote. The question before this Congress is simple. Do we remain defenseless and hope for mercy from a galaxy that has shown us none? Or do we activate the Terran protocols and defend our people? The vote was called. The chamber fell silent as each representative entered their decision. The numbers appeared on the display. Unanimous, every single vote said yes. President Song's voice was heavy. The Terran protocols are activated. Admiral Park, you will begin immediately. But it was Minyu's next words that changed everything. Madame President, he said slowly, if we do this, we cannot do it halfway. The need to learn a lesson. The galaxy needs to learn what happens when you harm humans. I'm not talking about defense. I'm talking about making sure this never happens again. What are you suggesting? Song asked. Total war, Minyu said. Not to defend, to eliminate the threat entirely. They wanted to see what humans can do when pushed. Let's show them. The chamber erupted. Voices shouted over each other, some in agreement, some in horror. General Shin stood up. He was a military commander from Korea, 70 years old, and he had served before the disarmament. I agree with Admiral Park. If we fight to win. Completely. Anything less, and we'll be having this conversation again in 5 years with a different enemy. Doctor spoke again. I can have the first weapons ready in 6 months, but I need to know, are we sure? Once we go down this path, we can't undo it. The galaxy will never see us the same way again. Minyu looked at her. They already don't see us the same way. They see us as prey, as weaklings who hide behind council rules. Let's show them what we really are. President Song closed her eyes. When she opened them, her decision was made. 6 months, we prepare, we build, and then we show what humanity can do. General Shin, you will command our military forces. Doctor, you have full authorization to access the protocols. Admiral Park, you will plan the campaign. Minyu bowed his head. There's one more thing. We should withdraw from the Galactic Council. What? Someone gasped. They abandoned us, Minyu said. They watched our children die and did nothing. We don't need them. We recall all our people to Sol system. We close our borders. We prepare. And when we're ready, we send a message they'll never forget. Ambassador nodded slowly. I'll handle the withdrawal. It will be my last act as ambassador. The Congress voted again. This time it wasn't unanimous, but it passed. Earth would withdraw from the Galactic Council. For the first time in 47 years, humanity would stand alone. As the session ended, people filed out quietly. There was no celebration, no victory speeches. They had just voted to abandon everything they had built, everything they had believed in. Minyu walked to the window and looked out over Geneva. The city was dark, mourning. He thought about the Harmony's hope, about Captain, who had never lost a passenger until the day he and everyone aboard were murdered, about Lieutenant Sara, whose last words were a plea to tell Earth the truth, about the children who would never grow up. Doctor stood beside him. Are we doing the right thing? I don't know, Minyu admitted, but we're doing the necessary thing. Those 50,000 people trusted us to keep them safe. We failed them. We won't fail the next 200,000. And Minyu's reflection in the window looked older than he felt, harder. The wanted war. They're going to get something worse. They're going to get humanity with the leash off. 6 months. That's all they had. 6 months to prepare for a war that would reshape the galaxy. 6 months until humanity stopped pretending to be something they weren't. 6 months until they learned that mercy was a choice, not a weakness. And that choice had just been revoked. Across Earth, factories began to retool. Shipyards came alive with activity. Scientists opened vaults that had been sealed for nearly half a century. The Terran protocols, locked away by a species that wanted to believe it had evolved beyond violence, were activated. Humanity prepared for war. And the galaxy had no idea what was coming. 6 months passed like a storm gathering strength. Earth transformed. Cities that had manufactured entertainment systems and civilian technology now produced weapons. Shipyards that had built exploration vessels now constructed warships. The change was so complete, so total, that the galaxy began to notice. Engineer worked 18-hour days at the orbital shipyard above Earth. He was 34 years old, and before the massacre, he had designed passenger ships, beautiful vessels meant for comfort and safety. Now he built something very different. The first wave is ready, he reported to Admiral Minyu Park during a video call. 200 ships. They don't look like much, but they'll do the job. Minyu studied the designs. The ships were sleek, angular, and dark. They looked nothing like the friendly curves of human civilian craft. These were predators. Weapon systems, Minyu asked. All equipped with Doctor's Quantum said. Each ship can tear apart a cruiser in under 30 seconds. They also have the AI-guided hunter drones. Once deployed, those things don't stop. They'll follow a target across the galaxy if they have to. Good, when can we launch? They're ready now, sir, just waiting for crews. The crews were ready too. Captain Jenna stood on the bridge of her new ship, the Retribution. She was 41 years old and she had lost her sister on New Sol. Her niece and nephew had been among the 800 children killed on the Harmony's Hope. She had volunteered the day Earth called for warriors. 200 ships, thousands of volunteers, every single one of them had lost someone in the massacre. They weren't fighting for territory or resources. They were fighting for something much simpler: justice. In her laboratory on Mars, Doctor worked on the final preparations. She hadn't slept properly in months. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the footage from New Sol. She had dedicated her life to peaceful science, and now she was creating weapons that could kill billions. "Are you okay?" her assistant asked. Looked up from her work. "No, but I'll be okay when this is done." She had created horrors, biological agents specifically designed to target physiology. They wouldn't kill instantly. That would be too merciful. They would shut down this respiratory system slowly, giving them time to understand what was happening, to feel the fear their victims had felt. Hated herself for creating it, but she hated them more. General Shin stood in the command center deep beneath Geneva. Screens surrounded him, showing the locations of every military installation in the galaxy. There were hundreds. The Empire controlled 17 star systems. Their fleet numbered over 3,000 ships. On paper, Earth didn't stand a chance. 200 ships against 3,000, but General Shin knew something that didn't. Humanity wasn't trying to win a fair fight. They were trying to win, period. "First target," Admiral Minu asked, entering the command center. Shin pointed to a system on the edge of space. "Their patrol fleet, 12 ships. They rotate through this sector every 3 weeks. Right now they're there." "Send Captain's fleet." The order went out. The 200 human ships departed from Sol system silently, their engines barely registering on sensors. They moved like ghosts through space, using technology they had never seen. Stealth systems that bent light, that masked energy signatures, that made the ships nearly invisible. The patrol fleet never saw them coming. Captain Jenna stood on the bridge of the Retribution as they approached. "All ships, this is, remember what they did. Remember why we're here. No mercy, no prisoners, make them understand." The human fleet attacked without warning, without declaration, without mercy, just like they had done. The quantum fired. Ships didn't explode. They simply came apart, their molecular bonds destroyed, their hulls turning to dust. Crew members didn't die from explosions. They died from sudden exposure to vacuum as their ships dissolved around them. They tried to fight back, but they were designed for traditional warfare. Energy weapons, missiles, boarding actions. The human weapons operated on completely different principles. Within 3 minutes, all 12 ships were gone. But the humans weren't done. They deployed the hunter drones, small, intelligent machines that locked onto escape pods and shuttles. The drones followed every single survivor, across light years if needed, and eliminated them. No survivors, that was the order. When the battle was over, Jenna broadcast a message on all Galactic Council frequencies. "This is Captain Jenna of the Terran Defense Fleet. They killed 50,000 of our people. They showed no mercy. They will receive none. This is just the beginning." The galaxy went silent with shock. The High Command watched the footage with disbelief. 12 ships destroyed in minutes. By humans. The soft, weak species that had run from conflict for 47 years. "It's impossible," one commander said. "Humans don't have this technology." "They do now," another replied. They sent messages to the Galactic Council demanding action. The Council held emergency sessions. Representatives stood and condemned Earth's aggression, calling for sanctions, for intervention. Ambassador appeared before the council one final time. She stood at the human podium, but she wasn't asking for help anymore. "You're right," she said calmly. "Earth is being aggressive. We're being violent. We're doing everything you told us not to do, but where were you when they killed our children? Where were you when they broadcast their massacre like entertainment? You sat here and told us to negotiate, to compromise, to defend ourselves better." She looked around the chamber. "We took your advice. We're defending ourselves, and we're making sure it never happens again. They wanted to know what humanity could do. Now they're finding out." "This is genocide," someone shouted. "No," corrected. "Genocide is what happened to New Sol. This is war, and we're going to win it." She walked out of the council chambers for the last time. Behind her, the representatives argued and debated, but Earth didn't care anymore. The time for words was over. Over the next 3 months, humanity struck again and again. They targeted military bases, shipyards, and command centers. Each attack was surgical, devastating, and complete. The human ships appeared without warning, destroyed their targets, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. They tried to fight back, but they couldn't hit what they couldn't find. Their sensors couldn't detect human ships until it was too late. Their weapons couldn't penetrate human shields. Their strategies meant nothing against an enemy that refused to fight fair. Admiral Menu watched the campaign from Earth, directing forces across the galaxy. He had become known as the Reaper of Sol. His tactics were ruthless, efficient, and terrifying. He didn't wage war to occupy or control. He waged war to eliminate. The empire, which had dominated this region of space for 3 centuries, began to crumble. Their fleets retreated. Their colonies fell silent. Their warriors, who had mocked humanity as prey, now fled at the first sign of human ships. In the council chambers, other species watched with growing fear. If humanity could do this to what could they do to anyone who opposed them? "We need to stop them," some representatives argued. "How?" others asked. "They've withdrawn from the council. They're not bound by our rules anymore." "Then we send our fleets to force them to stop." But no one volunteered, because everyone who watched the footage of human ships in action came to the same conclusion. Humanity had been holding back for 47 years. Now the leash was off, and the galaxy was seeing what humans really were. Not the peaceful diplomats, not the soft prey, but hunters, warriors, survivors who had evolved on a death world and spread across the stars, carrying with them the capacity for both great compassion and terrible violence. They had wanted to see what humans could do. Now they knew. And they were terrified. Captain Jinnah stood on the bridge of the Retribution, looking at the tactical display. They had destroyed over 400 ships. Thousands of warriors were dead. The Empire was in retreat. "Ma'am," her tactical officer said, "we have new orders from Admiral Park." Jinnah read them and smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had work to do. "Set course," she ordered. "We're going to Prime." The crew understood. They were going to end this. And across the galaxy, the leaders finally understood what their massacre had unleashed. They had poked a sleeping giant. They had mistaken mercy for weakness. Now they would pay the price. Humanity was coming, and hell was coming with them. The human fleet arrived at Prime 8 months after the massacre at New Sol. 200 ships hung in space above the, silent and dark against the stars. On the planet below, 12 billion waited in fear. Captain Jinnah stood on the bridge of the Retribution, looking down at the world that had sent the orders to kill her family. She felt no satisfaction, no joy, only the cold weight of what needed to be done. "We're receiving a transmission from the surface," her communications officer said. "It's the Emperor." "Put him on screen." The Emperor appeared. He was ancient by standards, his scales faded and cracked. His eyes, once fierce yellow, now looked dull with fear. Behind him stood his commanders, the ones who had ordered the attack on New Seoul, the ones who had laughed as they broadcast the massacre. "Humans," the Emperor said, his voice shaking, "we wish to negotiate. We offer unconditional surrender. We will evacuate the system. We will pay reparations. We will." "You will be silent," Admiral Minyu Park's voice cut through the transmission. He appeared on a split screen broadcasting from Earth. "You had your chance to negotiate. You had your chance to show mercy. You chose slaughter instead." "Please," the Emperor begged. "We were wrong. We made a mistake. We didn't understand." "You understood perfectly," Minyu said coldly. "You knew exactly what you were doing when you killed 3,000 civilians on the Harmony's Hope. You knew when you executed 47,000 colonists. You knew when you broadcast it to the galaxy as entertainment. You just didn't think there would be consequences." The Emperor's voice broke. "Mercy, we beg for mercy." Jenna leaned forward. "You didn't grant it to the children on my ship. You will receive the same you gave." She cut the transmission. But Minyu spoke again, broadcasting on all frequencies across the planet. "People of Prime, your leaders ordered the massacre of 50,000 humans. They killed children. They killed families. They did it without warning, without mercy, without reason except to prove their strength. We could do the same to you. We have weapons that could crack your planet in half. We could kill every single one of you in an hour." The population listened in terror. "But we won't," Minyu continued, "because that would make us like your leaders. Instead, we give you a choice. Your military commanders, everyone who ordered or participated in the New Seoul massacre, will surrender to us for trial. Your empire will be dissolved. Your fleet will be destroyed. You will never again threaten another species. If you refuse, then we will do what is necessary." The broadcast ended. The human fleet waited. On Prime, the population turned on their leaders. The Emperor and his commanders were dragged from the palace by their own people and delivered to human forces. They did not go quietly. They fought and screamed, but their own species wanted no more war with humanity. Over the next month, humanity systematically destroyed the military infrastructure. Every warship was disabled. Every weapons facility was demolished. Every military base was reduced to rubble. The empire, which had existed for 3 centuries, fell in less than 30 days. The commanders were tried before an Earth tribunal. The evidence was shown, the footage of the massacre, the communications where they had planned it, their own broadcasts boasting of their kills. They were found guilty of genocide and war crimes. Their sentence was life imprisonment on a human prison station, where they would spend the rest of their lives watching footage of what they had done. They would see the faces of the children they killed, every day, for the rest of their lives. Some said it was too merciful. Others said it was worse than death. Admiral Minyu said it was justice. With the defeated, humanity turned to rebuilding. New Seoul was reconstructed from the ground up, not as a colony, but as a memorial world. Every single name of the 50,000 dead was carved into a massive monument at the center of the capital. People came from across human space to leave flowers and remember. Doctors supervised the construction of defense platforms around every human colony. Weapons systems that made the look primitive. No human world would ever be defenseless again. General Shin established the Guardian Fleet, a permanent military force dedicated to protecting human space. Never again would humanity rely on others for protection. The fleet's motto was simple: never again. Ambassador, no longer representing Earth to the Council, worked on something new. Other species, seeing what humanity had done, began to reach out quietly. Small, peaceful civilizations that had been threatened by stronger neighbors. They asked if humanity would protect them too. The requests were reviewed carefully. Earth didn't want to become conquerors or empire builders, but they also wouldn't stand by while others suffered what they had suffered. "We'll help them," President Song decided, "but on our terms. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. We stand against genocide. We ensure this never happens to anyone else. And so humanity became something new in the galaxy. Not conquerors, not victims, but guardians. The Galactic Council held session after session, debating what to do about Earth. Some species wanted to sanction humanity for their violence. Others quietly admired what Earth had done. They had been bullies for centuries, and no one had been strong enough to stop them. The Council sent a delegation to Earth, requesting a meeting. President Song received them in Geneva. "We wish to discuss Earth's return to the Council," the delegation leader said carefully. "No," Song replied simply. "But surely—" "The Council abandoned us when we needed help," Song said. "You watched our people die and did nothing. You told us to negotiate with their killers. We trusted the Council once. That trust is gone. What will Earth do now? We'll protect our own. We'll help those who ask for help. We'll ensure that what happened to us never happens to anyone else. And we'll remember." The delegation left empty-handed. Across the galaxy, the news spread. Earth had defeated the Empire. The peaceful humans had become the most feared military power in known space, and they had done it in less than a year. A new saying emerged among galactic species: "Don't wake the humans." Admiral Minu Park, now 70 years old and ready to retire, visited New Seoul one final time. He walked through the memorial, reading the names. So many names. Children who never grew up. Parents who never saw their children again. Dreams that ended in violence. He placed flowers at the base of the monument, where Captain Lee's name was carved. Beside it was Lieutenant Sora Han, and 800 other names of children who had been on the Harmony's Hope. An old approached him carefully. It was one of the few allowed on New Seoul, part of a program where survivors helped maintain the memorial, a sort of living penance. "Why did you let us live?" they asked quietly. "After what we did, why didn't you destroy us all?" Minu looked at him for a long moment. "Because that's the difference between us and your leaders. They killed everyone. We killed only those who needed to be stopped. We could have done to you what you did to us. We chose restraint." "Why?" "Because mercy is a choice, not a weakness. Your people forgot that. We almost forgot it too. But in the end, we remembered that being human means being better than our worst impulses." The bowed his head. "We will never forget what we did. Your people make sure of that." "Good," Minu said. "Because the moment the galaxy forgets, it will happen again." He left the memorial and looked up at the sky. Defense satellites orbited silently, always watching. Human warships patrolled the system constantly. New Seoul would never be defenseless again. No human world would. Humanity had learned its lesson. Peace was precious, but it required strength. Mercy was valuable, but it had to be backed by the ability to defend yourself and others. Diplomacy worked, but only when the other side knew you could survive without it. Across human space, colonies thrived again. Children played in streets, grew up learning about New Seoul in schools, understanding the price of peace. They learned that their ancestors had tried to evolve beyond violence, and they had almost paid for that naivety with extinction. But they also learned that humanity had found a balance. They were not monsters. They were not conquerors. They were protectors, guardians, and survivors who had learned that sometimes the most moral choice was to have the strength to defend the defenseless. The remnants lived under human supervision, rebuilding their world but never again allowed to threaten others. They became a reminder to the galaxy of what happened when you mistook kindness for weakness. And humanity, they kept their weapons. They kept their fleets. They kept their guardian force that protected not just human worlds but any species that asked for help against genocide and tyranny. The galaxy had a new power, not one that conquered but one that you didn't cross, one that had proven it could be merciful, but only to those who earned it. Admiral Minu Park's final speech before retirement became famous across human space. "We tried to be better than our violent past. We succeeded. But we learned that being better doesn't mean being defenseless. We offered peace. The chose war. We will never make that mistake again. We will always offer peace first, but we will always be ready for war, because the greatest mercy we can show is protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Humanity had changed, not into monsters, into something the galaxy had never seen before: peaceful warriors, merciful guardians, a species that would rather talk than fight, but would rather fight than watch innocents die. The age of testing humanity's patience was over. The age of respecting humanity's strength had begun. And the 50,000 names carved into New Soul's memorial stood as an eternal reminder: never again.